The London street scene today is proliferated by innumerable youth cults, ranging from skinheads to soul boys, punks to mods, or rastas to rockers.
If I had a pound for every time I've seen Iron Maiden, I'd be a rich man by now.
If you want to fight someone, you'd have to dress up to fight. You can do it anyway, can't you? Go to the local pub and get punched in the face.
When the fans are not following Iron Maiden to the live gigs, they can be found at heavy metal discos like Neil Kay's Bandwagon in North London.
I don't always dress the same, you know. Just dress how I feel on that day. You know, I might not dress up sometimes, I just don't bother.
Even the clothes have an aggressive look about them. Patched denims are worn with leather jackets and shiny metal studs.
Operating, generating, new life, new life. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free. Break!
Hello, London! Welcome to the Mats&Axel show. My name is Mats.
I'm Axel.
And great pictures there from the early 80s. Anyone here recognize the very young boy George there? It's way before he got famous with Culture Club. But as you can see, cultural belonging and youth culture was extremely important to the UK youth of the 80s. You had your skinheads, you had your mods, you had your rockers, you had your headbangers, your teddy boys, your romantics, etc. But the thing is, in Sweden, where we come from, we had it much easier. You see, in Sweden, we can't have too much of the same thing. We can't have too many things at the same time because we tend to get confused. And in 1983, we only had 2 channels on TV, and we only had 2 youth cultures. And in 1983, I was 9 years old, and 2 albums that I still love to this day came out this year. It was Construction Time Again by Depeche Mode, and it was Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. But you see, in 1983, I couldn't buy both of these albums because you couldn't be into both synth and heavy metal at the same time, and you had to pick a side. So I became a synth kid. And the synth kids in Sweden, we were kind of sort of like the new romantics that you had in the UK, except we didn't really dress as fancy, and we never ever listened to Spandau Ballet, probably for good reasons.
Yeah, Mats and I aren't from the same generation. I turned 9 in 1990, and by then this conflict didn't exist. It was perfectly okay to like Depeche Mode's Violator and Cowboys from Hell by Pantera.
So this conflict between the synth kids and the heavy metal kids in Sweden was a quite short-lived phenomenon, but I would still say that it kind of shaped my generation.
Yeah, we're going to dig deeper into youth cultures by doing something we call... We're going to ask you not some questions, we're going to have some hand raise. And the question is, how did you identify during the 80s? And did anyone, any new romantics here? No? Some teddy boys? We got to have some old ex-punks in here, right? Mods, anyone? No? Yeah.
Oh, interesting, but we would love, of course, to dedicate an entire conference to this, but we're not actually here to talk about youth culture, unfortunately. Because even though being a new romantic or a mod or a headbanger, it might not mean anything today, we human beings, we still like to belong to groups. And the group that you identify yourself with, it doesn't only sort of influence the music that you listen to or the kind of clothes you wear, it also matters when we shop.
And this means that the social context matters when we shop. And this is one example on how our consumption is influenced by psychological mechanisms, and that is what we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah, what are the different processes in our brains that control our shopping behavior, and how can retailers use these insights in order to really connect with the customer in the right way?
And since this is quite complex stuff, we're going to need some help today, and please welcome to the stage Dr. John Cashberg. You have a microphone. Yeah.
Let's see if
yeah,
fantastic, it works. I'm standing in the middle.
Okay, John, Dr. John, great to have you on the show. Which youth culture did you belong to?
If I have to choose between the two that you described, I was probably synth kid, even if I've always been curious about lots of different contexts and stuff. So might be have traveled a little bit in and out of different groups at the time.
So some sort of a cultural chameleon.
Yes,
Yeah.
a culture chameleon, curious culture chameleon.
Yeah. But aside from that, I mean, who is Dr. John Carlsberg today?
Today, I've worked many years in retail, a lot of years within the H&M group, and both with online stores and offline stores in Sweden and in some other countries. And after some years in H&M, I started being more curious about why people were shopping, and not only that people were shopping. So I went back to school. I started doing research on this. So I spent like 5 years trying to decipher human brains a little bit and to understand a little bit what's going on. And today I work as a head of strategy and insights in a retail agency in Sweden, but it's basically with the international business. But I'm passionately interested in why we shop and how our quirky brains are working and making it easier or not so easy for us to act in the way we do. So that's me.
Great.
So let's continue at looking at groups and subcultures. Whatever happened to the synth kids and the heavy metal kids of the 80s? Well, of course we grew up, we washed off the eyeliner, or we hung our denim vests back in the closet, but that doesn't mean that we stopped identifying with different groups.
No. Here we have a lot of interesting Facebook groups. Maybe you're joined some of these groups. I would definitely join the fans of the London Underground if I ever lived in the UK.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see that there are so few fans of the London Underground, only 28 people. In fact, there are more women who like to fight and wrestle men than there are fans of the London Underground. And to a certain extent, we can understand it because it gets crowded, it's noisy, and there are delays. But one thing that's interesting is that there are so many fans of 50 Shades of Grey, which means, I guess, that Londoners are really into this masochistic stuff, which then makes it even more strange that there are so few fans of the London Underground.
Yeah. But what happens when a man approaches his middle age? Well, he needs to prove he's still young. Some men out here maybe started running marathon or triathlons just to prove a point. In Sweden, where we come from, we have this cross-country ski race called the Vasa race. It's 90 kilometers. I've done it. It's horrible. I'm never going to do it again. But some men aren't as mentally strong as I am and get stuck to this addiction. Meet my friend Mats.
Yeah, so this is me, and I realize this is not a healthy behavior. I buy super expensive skis, I buy poles, brushes, I hide some of these expenses from my wife, and I know it's not good, but the thing is, it's not even that fun doing this race. I mean, it's okay here, I reach the finish line, but when you're in the middle of the race, you've skied for a couple of hours, you're super tired, you're like 55 kilometers to go, it's not as fun, it really, really sucks, and I tell myself every year, I'm not doing this again. But then I still enter in a race the next year. And the thing is, why do I do this? Well, it's extremely important for my identity as a human being. I might not love doing the Vasa race, but I really love being a Vasa racer.
John, what are we seeing here? Explain.
I'll try to put some context to this. No, but of course, being part of the Vasa community will add a lot of personal value to you. You want to buy into those associations. But then when we talk about groups and communities, you also want to be part of the Vasa community to signal other things to the rest of the world, to the community outside of it. Our brain uses heuristics to make decisions, and if you can then buy into that, that will make it easier for other people to value also and to judge you. And this, of course, will then guide how you consume, but also then a little bit on how other consume and perceive marketing.
Okay. But another interesting thing is how can retailers create offers that really appeals to a specific subgroup? Well, sometimes it's pretty easy. Of course, I bought this. This is Vitargo Carbo Loader. It's like a powder you mix with water, and you start drinking this a couple of days before the race in order not to get too fatigued. And of course I like this. Why do I like this? Well, it's made for athletes. I want to be an athlete. And it's real science. I like science. So of course this speaks to me, but then I also found another product on the same website. This is also some sort of carbo loader, but apparently this is a pancake mix made for naughty boys. I don't feel like a naughty boy. And it tastes like pink cookies. So obviously I would never ever touch this stuff. Why do I feel this way, John?
No, but at the same time as you want to be part of certain groups, you want to make sure that you are not associated to some other groups. So there's very much of an in-group and out-group context here. And it's even been shown in research that if someone that you do not want to be affiliated with is reviewing something very badly, you will be more prone to buy those things. So your purchase intentions will actually go up. So there's some powerful social contextual mechanisms that we're talking about here.
Okay, so if I see a negative review from one of the naughty boys for my product, then I want to buy it more.
Yes, you might just want to be, maybe even more important for you to belong to that and to show that you really belong to the in-group in your case.
Yeah, okay. But successful brands, they really manage successfully to speak to a certain group, but I would say an interesting thing that we have found out is that while some of these groups, they really want the group to become bigger and bigger, the more the merrier. Some other groups, they want to sort of maintain their exclusivity. For instance, if I buy a Ferrari Testarossa, which I'm not going to do, then I don't want my neighbor showing up in the same exact car the day after. Why is that?
No, but at the same time as you're talking about Ferrari, when Porsche started making SUVs quite some time ago, there was very much of an uproar in the Porsche community because they were then starting to craft regular family cars that was not only then for that group. And it's that's a really powerful mechanism there that you feel that you want to be part of some groups and not part of others, and the farther away in social distance from you they come, the less valuable in a way these people become. In some of the research that I did, I showed that a company that does advertising versus a company that does not do advertising is perceived worse. Because if you do not do advertising, you're more exclusive, and the value of the average customer that you then want to be affiliated with is higher. So purchase intentions and brand attitudes actually go down in some cases if you do advertising and spread too thinly.
But would you say that it was a bad decision by Porsche to start making the Cayenne?
No, I think that it was probably a very, very good decision because they managed then to branch out and meet new target groups and sell a lot more cars.
Yeah.
A brand is a bit like being in a band, like Mats and I, and you want as many fans as possible, but when you try to adapt to reach more people, you might risking your old fans. This album, Metallica's Black Album, was released in 1991, and many of their old fans felt they had become too commercial. This album instead, Master of Puppets, released in 1986, is considered the best Metallica album by the old Metallica fan, but it sold 10 million copies, while the Black Album sold 33 million copies, so commercially, it was the right decision.
You could argue that. I mean, you become more commercial, you sell 3 times as many albums, so of course that was a good decision, but you need also to take into account that the album after the Black Album, this one called Load, this was when Metallica really tried to become super commercial, a really sort of streamlined MTV sound. Lars Ulrich got some hair implants. I mean, this only sold 8 million copies. So of course for any band, super good, but for Metallica, a disaster. So you shouldn't really go too far either. John, do you have any sort of examples? Do you know of any brands who maybe try to become a little too popular for their own good?
I think there are probably lots of examples, but I want to highlight one thing from when I was working within the H&M group, when there was a denim brand some years ago that was called Cheap Monday, that was very much coming from underground, and that was growing very fast, especially in the Nordics, that the H&M group bought. And very shortly, it started deteriorating and actually went bankrupt relatively soon after that. So it was, in a way, I would blame that becoming then too commercial and losing your original fan group.
Thanks, Dr. John. But we need to move on, and we're actually going back to the 80s and the synth kids.
Won't you come and join us in our playground?
It was the 12th of February, 1988. I was 13 years old, and I was going to my first big concert. It was Depeche Mode at the Ice Stadium in Stockholm. But the real lasting impression of this evening, it wasn't actually Depeche Mode. It was the opening act, Nights of Red. And they really created a long-lasting impression in me. They scared the hell out of me. You see, this was not the kind of poppy synth I've been listening to back in my room. This was something entirely different. This was electronic body music, EBM, something you feel in your entire body.
So external impressions make our bodies react, but it also works the other way around. Sounds a bit complicated. We need to talk to Dr. John again. Can you tell us what popcorn has to do with anything here?
Yeah, but yeah, this is, it's touching on a mechanism that's called embodiment or grounded cognition. In general, the brain is basically telling us what to do physically, but there are also things that go the other way around. So, for example, if you eat popcorn while seeing an ad, you will make it more difficult for a physical process that's called subvocal articulation. So basically, you would kind of mimic the brand name, and sometimes you would speak it out unconsciously, and that would actually help like a recall processes in the brain. So if you then eat popcorn, you disturb that process, it would be less likely then to remember the brand name. I guess chewing gum and stuff would have the same effect, which I think is kind of fun.
So, and how can then retailers use these insights?
No, but the same thing here. If you, for example, it's important for you in advertising or in other things that it's trying to make it easy for the brain to see the body using the product. So it's pretty easy. For example, one example could be a plate of spaghetti, if that's shown in an ad. If you put a fork in it, you'll be more likely to like the brand, to like the ad. Because it's then the physical process then of eating is easier for the brain than to somehow discern. Yep. So I think that's, and there's also the same process it's been shown that if you, for example, if you give reviews, if you give a video review compared to a written review, they will be different. A video review will have much more emotional content. So it's much more you and emotions. The same thing with different devices. You will buy different things maybe on your smartphone compared to a desktop, because it's also more emotional to use your phone compared to a desktop. Same thing when ordering food. If you use a vending machine, you're using it's more healthier stuff in a vending machine compared to speaking out, because verbal, it's closer to the brain and you say more emotional things than you write and stuff. So yeah, lots of fun things.
Okay. Time flies when we're having fun. I think it's time to wrap things up. Don't go anywhere. We're Dr. John. Any final reflections for the audience?
No, and I hope that it's come across a little bit to the audience here. That I think that this is, it's so much fun, and it's important to be curious. And there are lots of things that are a bit quirky, but that can make a difference. And I believe that measuring things, really trying to understand the customer, putting yourself in their shoes, will make a big difference in the end.
Thanks, Dr. John. There are many customer needs waiting to be filled, needs we didn't know we had. Who had known that this product would be a huge success? Anyone know what it is? It's the boyfriend pillow. What is this, you might think? But if you don't have a partner but still want to hug at night, this product is super effective. You might find it a bit creepy, a bit strange. It's a half man with a shirt on, but it's sold really, really, really well.
Yeah. Okay, but to conclude, we're going back to where we started with synth and heavy metal. Who are these guys? Anyone? We're in the UK, you must know these guys.
From Birmingham.
From Birmingham, Black Sabbath. Okay. But before they became Black Sabbath, they were called Earth, and they played really, really boring blues rock. But one time, they were standing outside the rehearsal studio in Birmingham, and they noticed this long line of people waiting in line to see a movie that was called Black Sabbath. And they thought to themselves, if so many people are willing to spend money, to pay money, to be scared by a movie, maybe the same people would also pay money to be scared by music. So with that in mind, they went back to their studio and they wrote this song. This is, of course, the opening riff to the song Black Sabbath off the first Black Sabbath album. And here, heavy metal as a musical genre was born. So what did they do? Well, they found something that triggered a psychological mechanism in our brains, and they used that in order to create a whole new thing. And although things like the boyfriend pillow and heavy metal are already invented, I'm sure that there are plenty of other needs out there in market waiting to be filled. Good luck with that.
Thanks, John.